In Leprechaun 2, the story is told of our wee little foe, 2,000 years old, seeking a lass whom he can bewitch, to be his bride in dark wedded bliss, though his only true love is for gold. The film Leprechaun 2 is the 1994 sequel to the 1993 film Leprechaun. It was directed by Rodman Flender and written by Turi Meyer and Al Septon, as Mark Jones was busy working on the film Rumpelstiltskin at this time. This was the last Leprechaun movie to be released in theaters, and the only Leprechaun movie to actually take place on St. Patrick's Day. The film's set in Los Angeles, which doesn't really matter that much. The characters Cody and Morty are scammers who prey on naive tourists with their dark side towards hers, but that's not really that much of a major plot point, and it could really take place anywhere. The Leprechaun, who is portrayed once again by Warwick Davis, is on a mission to find a bride, a task which he's only able to accomplish once every 1,000 years, for reasons. He finds a young woman named Bridget, played by Siobhan Durkin, who is the descendant of his former slave, whose daughter, also played by Durkin, he attempted to marry exactly 1,000 years earlier, though his plan was thwarted by the aforementioned slave after the Leprechaun told him exactly what he was up to and how to stop him, after which the Leprechaun killed him and vowed to marry one of his female descendants in 1,000 years. This time around, things still don't go according to plan, and the Leprechaun finds himself facing opposition from the girl herself, as well as her kind of boyfriend and his alcoholic Uncle Morty, who work together to try to keep him from kidnapping her and forcing her to marry him. One of the strengths of this film is its humor. There's a good balance between the horror and comedy elements, which makes it enjoyable to watch, and Uncle Morty is particularly funny. The film's also well-paced, arguably better paced than the first film, with the kills spread out more throughout the film, and while there still isn't a huge body count in this film, there's still a few more kills than in the first one. Another strength of the film is its makeup effects. The Leprechaun's depicted as a terrifying and monstrous creature, and the prosthetics and makeup used to bring him to life are just as good as they were in the first film, as is Warwick Davis's performance as the Leprechaun, and he really is the key to making this whole film work. However, the film also has its weaknesses. The sets leave something to be desired. They use a ton of burlap for some reason, which makes it feel a lot cheaper than the first film, despite the fact that the budget was actually double what it was on the first one. Also, the acting is pretty terrible, and the two leads just aren't very convincing as a couple. Also, the plot is somewhat confusing. There are several things that aren't explained very well, and others that don't make any sense at all. There's zero continuity between this film and the first one, which has led many people to the conclusion that this is a totally different Leprechaun. The Leprechaun states at the beginning of the film that he's 1,000 years old.
I'm 1,000 years old.
Which means in present day, he's 2,000 years old, whereas the Leprechaun from the first film stated that he was only 600 years old.
I'm 600 years old.
Also, in the first film, his weakness is a freshly plucked four-leaf clover.
Fuck you, Lucky Charms.
Whereas in this film, it's iron. His powers are totally different than they were in the first film, with this Leprechaun seeming to be more powerful than the Leprechaun in the first film, though his powers do seem to be somewhat inconsistent. At times he's able to use magic to do seemingly impossible things like teleporting and shape-shifting, but at other times he seems vulnerable to physical attacks, like having a bookcase pushed on top of it. The rules of the Leprechaun magic and his powers are never really established. It's never clear what he can and can't do, which makes it hard to really understand the stakes of the story. Though it's funny to see that when he's drunk, his telekinesis powers get wobbly. I love that. Also, The Leprechaun's motivation for wanting to marry a human woman is never really explained. It seems like a really strange goal for this particular character. The Leprechaun's goal seems to have power to heal wounds and grant wishes, but this aspect of the story is never really developed or explained. And at one point in the film, the Leprechaun's unable to hurt Cody because he's in possession of one of the Leprechaun's gold coins.
You can't do it, can you? As long as I have this.
Which was not the case in the first film, but it was also demonstrably not the case earlier on in this film when the Leprechaun ripped someone's stomach open to get his gold out. Speaking of which, I don't understand why Morty is able to outsmart the Leprechaun in the bar by challenging him to a drinking contest and then cheating, and is so stupid with his wishes. He outright says, "I could wish for $1 billion, but instead I wish for your pot of gold?"
I could ask you for $1 million, even $1 billion, but no. What I think I would like is your crummy pot of gold.
That is the dumbest possible wish that he could make. But we do get a really cool kill scene out of it when the Leprechaun materializes the pot of gold in his stomach, and then he wishes that it was out of him, and the Leprechaun rips his stomach open to take the pot of gold out, thus killing him. There's also another really great kill scene that's probably the best in the movie, despite the fact that it cuts away and we only see it in shadow. But there's a very, very brief love triangle when Bridget is upset that Cody has to work, and so she basically ditches him to go on a date with the guy that works at the go-kart track because he decides to take off work, at the end of which he is a total dick and acts like she should give it up because he skipped out on his job to go go-karting with her and bought her chili dogs.
And what about those chili dogs?
After which she elbows him and walks away, and this is when the Leprechaun manifests a mirage of sorts of Bridget, who then calls him into the garage and undoes her shirt, tricking him into motorboating running lawnmower blades, which he totally deserved and is hilarious. The Leprechaun's behavior in the film is often inconsistent. At times he seems to be a cartoonish villain who enjoys taunting and tormenting his victims, but at other times he seems to be genuinely threatening and dangerous. And the ending of the film is very abrupt and doesn't really make sense. The Leprechaun's seemingly defeated by being tricked into accepting a fake gold coin, but it's never really explained why this would work or why it would even be a good idea in the first place, when the Leprechaun seemingly has a sixth sense with regard to his gold and has an uncanny ability to track down a single gold piece that's missing. Also, the two leads walk away at the end as if everything is fine and they could just go on with their lives, completely ignoring the fact that Cody is now a fugitive who the police believe to be a spree killer responsible for all of the murders committed by the Leprechaun. And despite all these inconsistencies and things that bother me, it really is a fun film. Leprechaun 2 is a horror comedy that's sure to delight fans of the genre with a 12-ounce mix of horror and comedy elements, and Warwick Davis's always enjoyable performance as a Leprechaun. However, its weak acting and confusing plot may be a turnoff for some viewers. Overall, it's a fun and entertaining horror comedy that's perfect for a night in with some friends and a few drinks. It's not going to win any awards, but it's definitely worth a watch if you're in the mood for something silly and a wee bit gory. Alright, well, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, can you please hit the like button? You can also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to see more videos like this. And until next time, keep on creeping on.